What's happening, everyone, and welcome to Al Chile. And you already know, man, I'm here with No Paul, Run PMC, and Sean Gringo Hicks, and we're feeling good, dude. We had a historic weekend, and I tell you what, I've been partying since Saturday, and I've been having a good old time. And Canelo is the undisputed champion, And I gotta say, man, I've just been basking in the post-fight coverage. We're on a little bit late, but this party is still continuing. I still got good energy. And Canelo is getting the praise that he deserves. And I got to say, so far, I don't think I've heard anything that's too over the top as far as it comes to Canelo Alvarez coverage, baby. I'm hearing stuff like he might be ranked the highest Mexican of all time. Now, I'm going to hold off on that one. I don't know enough about Mexican boxing history to say for sure, but what he's doing is very impressive. What he's doing is very historic. And then I've also heard people saying that Canelo has the right to do whatever the hell he wants next to me, just like I've been saying, man. So lots of great stuff, man. We're just going to kick it around and talk a little bit. I want my homies to talk about the fight itself, talk about how they feel about what Canelo's done, and we'll just pass it around. So, no, Paul, since you've been calling this for a long time, and I know you have a strong opinion on where Canelo ranks at as far as Mexicans, man, I thought I'd give the floor to you first, homie, and let us know what you think.
As far as how he ranks with the Mexican list, I don't know. I think that that question in itself, I really don't like it because it's like, in order to give Canelo praise, you got to put everybody else down, on that Mexican list of great champions. So, as far as that question right there, I'd rather just not answer it, because everybody has a different era and everybody has a different set of circumstances. We know that Canelo was kind of like a little bit, you could say, on the privileged side, but regardless, I mean, you tend to see guys that are privileged, it's harder for them because they've had it so easy. And I think that Canelo actually earned his privilege a little bit more than guys like Chavez Jr. and stuff like that, who was just given rolled out a red carpet for him. And we see that kind of stuff spoiled Chavez Jr. to the point where he doesn't even care. He just wants to get, quick, easy money. So as far as that, we got to give Canelo credit right there, I think, for not getting spoiled. And as far as that, I think also we make the mistake of thinking that he had privilege, but the dude got what he deserved, because he started his pro career at 15, so he had a head start on most of the other boxers, basically because he worked his way up, sort of. He had his Mayweather fight at like 22, and before then he had already fought Mosley and guys like that. So, I think the real question is, where do you rank him as a top boxer of all time, basically? I think it might be a little too early, maybe, to start talking that way because he hasn't ended his career. But I still think that's a better question than asking where he ranks among the top Mexican boxers.
Well, hey, man, I'll tell you what, that's all right, dude. I like how humble you are, just like Canelo. No, Paul. And I've heard a lot of people give their opinions that aren't Mexicans. I feel like some Mexicans, although Sean, your homie, I forget his name. It's off the top of my one of your co-hosts. He's Mexican and he's already declared it. So some
Hopper,
people are, but I know
I
it's a
think.
lot of people. Exactly, Hopper. And I liked what he had to say, man. Like I said, I'm just not qualified to go there yet, but I do like that people are actually having that conversation. And I'm personally of the opinion that it's not too early to have that conversation. But like I said, I just need to do some more research. But I'm still very impressed with things. And then I want to welcome El Chido Boxing in the house. A-Rod is here. The Don is here hanging out with us. Thank you for joining us, man. So, Run, what do you think, bro? Like, what'd you think of the fight?
No, I think it was a great performance. I mean, when I was watching it, I was having trouble scoring the fight, so I'm like, screw it. I'm gonna stop even trying to score and just enjoy the fight. And after going back and watching it, I really gained a greater appreciation for what I touched on last week about how Canelo's ability to manage his energy in the ring. And like, because when I initially watched it, I'm like, wow, Caleb Plant's winning more rounds than I thought he was. And then after on when I rewatched it yesterday, I'm like, wow, Canelo's catching a lot on his punches. He did get hit with some punches, but they weren't as damaging shots as he was delivering to Plant. But I mean, he's just sort of elevated since he moved up to 168, and it's really crazy to see and like think about what his ceiling is going to be. But when it comes to um, where he ranks of all-time Mexican boxers, I don't think also really qualified to answer that question. But what I can say is I followed his career since he fought, I think it was the Leonardo Tyner fight, or a little bit after that. Might have been when he fought Cotto's brother. So like 2009, 2010. And I could say that he's one of two of my favorite Mexican fighters that I've got to watch in my own lifetime, him and Juan Manuel Marquez. So, but I mean, it's sort of, I don't think it's fair yet to rank Canelo yet, because his career is far from over. We don't even know how much longer he has, because as you see sometimes when boxers get older, like we could talk about Floyd Mayweather, for example, when they're out of their prime, they change their style. And it seems like Canelo's style is very fluid. So who knows how long he could sort of prolong his career once he does get to the point where he's not in his prime, because I believe he's in his prime right now. So we really can't rank it. So who knows what can happen next? But I think it's probably when it's said and done, maybe in, I don't know how many years, I don't know how long he wants to box, but say in like another 10 years, if he continues at the streak he's going, there's no doubt he's definitely would be probably up at the top of Mexican boxing history.
Very nice, man. And I would like to highlight the Texan. I just want everybody to know that he and I had a bet and he's paid up. I congratulate him for breaking down the fight very well. Like, he saw some things that he told me to keep an eye on, and I looked and he was right, man. So, hey, man, salute. Thank you so much for hitting me up. And then I'd also like to welcome the originator of Al Chile. A-Rod is here to join us. Welcome, A-Rod. I got a little bit of feedback, brother. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. I'm here at work. I want to chime in on this Canelo thing real quick.
Please do.
Well, yeah, everybody's going with that Mexican great of all time, but you guys heard me before where I don't categorize somebody as the best of all time. I just put them all together, and they're all great, bro, in their era. There's no way to compare Canelo's opposition compared to the guys back in the days, because people back in the days had to get into a fight to become famous. Nowadays, people in Canelo's era, all they need is a TikTok to be able to get famous, and they're good. You know what I mean? That's why the level of competition is different, and Canelo's not in the level of competition to compared to the people in the past. He's not going to reach that, because these guys ain't fighting nobody. You know what I mean? But he is accomplished. He is great. He's beat nothing but champions, so he is an all-time great, together with all the people in the past.
Awesome, man. And while we have you, I don't know how long you can hang out, but dude, please tell us, what did you think of the fight itself?
That was good, man. It was crazy to see Canelo's trying to figure out how to get in, and you could see Patton just blocking those shots with that shoulder roll. And Canelo just started dropping those hands, you know what I mean, making those hands go down and caught him up top, because that left hook that caught him at the end of the fight, it was landing all night, but sometimes it was landing on the glove, partially on the glove and the face, and then those, as soon as he started going to the body and to the arms, that started dropping. That's when they landed.
Nice, man. Are you still with us, bro? You started breaking up just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Hey, man, you know what? I noticed those same things too, man. I want to break it down, but first I'd love to hear from Sean and what he thought about it. Dude, like, what'd you think about the fight itself, man? Like, what were you seeing? And what do you think about Canelo's status overall?
Yeah, what's up, A-Rod, and what's everybody up in the chat? Definitely enjoyed the fight. It was, definitely enjoyable. It played out like I thought it would, but at the same time, it was different in the standpoint of, Caleb Plant was able to do a little bit more as far as his strategy, like with the Philly shell, or the defense with the shoulder roll that he was using. I think that was a positive, because it was different and he had to make adjustments as far as the timing and distance for Canelo. But at the same time, because he wasn't fully committed to it, it also left him open on the left-hand side for that hook. So it had its positives as far as, like, deflective at times, and it did add value. But because of his lack of commitment through it, he's still getting peppered, even though he was blocking it, but he wasn't blocking it fully. It, eventually was tenderizing those ribs, and, it was time for dinner that 11th round, and, we saw how it played out. So I think as far as Canelo, how he ranks for me, I've enjoyed his journey quite a bit. I mean, if you look at his development and the way he's gone up as far as his technical skills, He's become so dedicated as far as his footwork, and I like the fact that he's truly was focused on going after this undisputed title, and how, I mean, active 4 fights within the 12-month period. I mean, that in itself, I mean, that has to be celebrated right there, irregardless of what people may consider of the competition. But as far as for me personally, fighters I've enjoyed watching, from regardless of era, regardless of where they're from nationality wise, Canelo definitely ranks up there because I like his maturation, I like his development, I like his commitment, and I like that every time I see him, I see a little nuance that he's working to improve, and I truly believe he's dedicated to be the best. And I think that with him still being in his prime and working so hard, I think he wants to maximize his prime and get the most out of it, and we're going to benefit from it. So it needs to be celebrated, not questioned and dismissed. So I'm happy as a boxing fan.
Oh yeah, man. A lot of great observations. A-Rod, did you want to add anything else, brother?
Oh, just saying that a lot of people are questioning it because the level of opposition, but it ain't Canelo's fault that these guys ain't fighting nobody or they ain't fighting each other. So he's still fighting the champion at the end of the day, and accomplished champion at Caleb Smith also. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's a great point. And and I've been saying that for a while, and I noticed that everybody's starting to touch on it now because it's just getting so obvious. The disparity between what Canelo's doing and his peers around him it's almost embarrassing. And there's no excuse. You can't use the excuse that because Canelo's in the weight class or people are waiting for a payday. Like these guys don't do anything before Canelo or after Canelo, whether they're in his weight class or not. And I got to say, G Funky and I, we agree, man. When he was making the point that, hey, Triple G, if he goes unified in December, I mean, well, you could make the argument that he's the best guy to go up next. As far as what happened on Saturday, man, I got to say that was one hell of a fight, y'all. I had a really good time, watching that fight, and Plant surprised me. Like it kind of went the way it did, but he made a better account of himself than I thought he would. I was really impressed with his athleticism, his hand-eye coordination, and his ability to block shots. A lot of times when Canelo throws, especially like when the opponent starts hurting, the opponent really doesn't know where the punch is landing. And don't get me wrong, I mean, you could look at Plant's ribcage and, obviously Canelo got his punches in, but Plant did a good job of moving around, did a good job of blocking shots, did a good job of countering and trying to mess up Canelo's timing. Plant had rhythm. So I think that his stock went up in my mind, and it also brought up the stock I had in my mind for Canelo. We had Plant, who was a thorough mover for over 10 rounds. And Canelo did a very good job of patiently stalking him, using that great applied pressure that he's been using for a while now. Did a good job of cutting off the ring when he felt it was a good opportunity to. He showed patience and poise. I felt like he had complete control of the fight, probably around like the 5th or 6th. Like I remember watching the fight and not scoring it, but I remember thinking that Plant did a really good job in the first 2 to 3 rounds. And I started thinking to myself, oh shit, I better score this just in case, we need to talk about it. So I split the early rounds, 2 rounds apiece, and then I think maybe you could give Plant maybe one more round, maybe even a 4th. But I personally wouldn't. But you maybe could if you were looking. Like I said, I only had a chance to watch it once, but I was very impressed with Plant. But Canelo was controlling the pace of the fight, using that great applied pressure and just whacking away at Plant. And for a minute there, and I want y'all to know, I could say this now, I had a really big bet on Canelo Alvarez by KO, and I was starting to sweat. I had a good little sweat going, nervous, but Canelo pulled it out, and I got to say, like, this reminded me a little bit of the Kovalev knockout. Like, he took him into the deep water and then he executed him. And I've always maintained that, in that Kovalev fight, like, I think that if you have anything less than a draw and you have Kovalev winning up into the 11th, like, I think that's a bit of a biased scorecard. That's just my opinion. I've gone back and looked at it a couple times. But my thing is, like, some people act like it was this come from behind miracle win when it wasn't. If you watch that last round, and even the 10th round, really, you see Canelo just starting to turn it on. He goes into that next gear. And I was actually listening to Robert Garcia. We'll be talking about him later, but he also said this, and I said this too. Like, it looked like he just turned it on again. If you watch that knockout, the whole thing, like, all of a sudden Canelo has like this big surge of energy. He chased Caleb Plant after the first knockdown. He chased Caleb Plant around like 3 sides of the ring, and he just had nothing but energy, combos, accuracy, and he looked fresh. And so I'm not saying he carried him. I think that he had to apply more constant pressure. but I do think that Canelo was winning regardless. So I think he was a little bit more dominant than he was against Kovalev with this Plant fight. But man, I just it was really awesome to watch it in real time. There was some suspense for me because I had a bet going, but I mean, to me, it looked like Canelo was clearly winning. Like, it didn't cross my mind that Plant could be up or might win this. I thought it was a very clear win either way. The stoppage itself, I'd like to know what you guys think about it. Like, obviously, it was a very good stoppage, but I did like the way Plant wanted to shoot right back up and keep fighting. It made me respect him a little bit more, although it was the right thing. Although, since it was undisputed and Caleb Plant was undefeated, maybe they could have let it go. But I mean, it was over. I mean, Canelo is just such a great finisher. There was no way that Caleb Plant was going to get out of that. No way in hell. But, like I said, I would have wanted it to go just a little bit longer. But I mean, it was still a highlight reel KO.
Can I go first? I can
Yes,
jump
sir.
off right after.
Yeah, go for it, A-Rod.
Knocked out. I heard Drew Evo. I heard a couple of channels. They should have let him get back up, see if he could do the 10 count. And I was like, I'm sorry guys, but there were 2 knockdowns. There was about 4 with unanswered punches. That should have been a stoppage anyways if he stayed up. You know what I'm saying? That would have been an accumulation of 8 punches unanswered. That dude was done. Either way. So for him to get hurt as much as he already did, you shouldn't think that he should continue, or the ref or allow him to stand back up and get punished again, because Canelo was not going to let him off. You know what I mean?
Right.
And earlier you mentioned Triple G, and people try to go to Triple G's record just so they could say that Canelo didn't get a good win off of him or a good fight. But at the end of the day, when I was arguing with somebody that was a Mayweather fan, I was like, if Triple G wasn't dangerous, then Mayweather would have fought him. You know what I mean? So that's what I got to chime in. I got to go, guys. Have a good show. And thank you for continuing the Chile.
Hey, Rod.
Hey,
Check
man,
you
thank
out,
you so
brother.
much.
Have a good
You're
day.
always welcome, man. So come on back anytime, brother.
All right, later, guys.
Peace.
Later, Gringo.
All right,
Cool,
man.
brother.
Well, that
Yeah,
was
I
A-Rod. So anybody else got anything to say, man, about like the fight itself?
Yeah, I have a couple observations that I saw. You know, I thought that Canelo, like you said, had a surge of energy, and it was kind of weird because for like 2 or 3 rounds, I think he didn't want to sit back down on the stool, kind of like he did with Chavez Jr. And my girlfriend was like, "Hey, he doesn't want to sit down. I think he wants to keep his energy up." But I noticed that as soon as on the next round, when he did sit down, that's when he had that big surge of energy. It's like he got his second wind, and he was like, which at the same time, you can't really call it a second wind because I don't think he really looked tired. In fact, the one that looked tired was Caleb Plant. And I wanted to say, to 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 El Gringo's point about the Philly shell and all that. I've been thinking about this for a while. Because Canelo's hitting shoulders, he's hitting other body parts now, so he might have found a kink in that armor with the whole Philly shell. He's found an answer to it. If you can't get to their face, you just hit them on the shoulders, wherever, and we'll see if the opponent can stand up to all that punishment.
Yeah, that's been the thing for years too. That even when leading up to even before that, even leading up to the Mayweather fight, Freddie Roach was just saying like he was gonna have Manny Pacquiao just throw, because she's a lefty, who would throw, because Floyd would like lean over, and so with Caleb Plant was leaning over to their right, just have him throw like low right hands that would like be like toward the torso, but you would land on the face, and that's what Canelo was sort of doing with the left hook and doubling up on the left hook. So he definitely found a way to break through this fight. And I also think like early on, Plant was good because he had all of his energy, but once it starts slowing a bit and your reflexes aren't there and you've been beaten up, whether they're landing to the body, on your back, arms, you're going to slow down and you're going to be tentative. And so that's when Canelo capitalized.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, a grazing shot is still a shot, and when it lands, you're gonna feel it, and it's definitely gonna put you at a loss or question and be comfortable as far as moving forward. And he had a game plan, he had a strategy. Shout out to him and his team as far as Plant. But you're going up against a man in his prime, and he was definitely ready for the challenge. And I think he did what we expected. So I really appreciate the fight. And shout out to Caleb. Actually, I guess me being a weird boxing fan, I kind of walked away from the fight, and we talked about what the other guys should be doing. They're sitting there waiting for the lottery ticket from Canelo. It's like made me more frustrated. Like, why aren't these guys fighting each other? Like, I would have loved to see Caleb Plant against a real contender and seeing what he can do. I mean, he's a good boxer, man. He's got a tough beard, and he and his team had a good game plan. I think if he would have been more dedicated and had more time, if he's always done the Philly shell, then that's fine. But to bring that, incorporate that against in the biggest fight of your life with such a huge historical fight. Is a bold move, but to Run PMC's point and A-Rod's point, you have to be fully engaged and to be able to do that. And I don't think he had the physical stamina to continue doing it, because that seemed like after the 6th round, because I gave Plant 1 and 4 and 9. That after that and 9 I think was kind of like a flurry, because it felt like maybe a round where Canelo was kind of backing off a little bit. But overall, I thought there was a lot of opportunities for Plant, and he did well in the beginning. But after the 6th round, to me, it was kind of like he was figured out, and he knew it was figured out as well.
Sean, I wanted to ask, do you think that from this day forward, Caleb Plant's going to be a Philly shell fighter?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, man. Like, because here's the thing. It's all about results, right? Especially in boxing. Either you win or you lose. And he had success. And if he's able to incorporate that where it's not, natural, it's not natural for him, he's able to incorporate it in a natural way. And, I think that could really bode well. For what we've seen is, both ends of the spectrum. I've seen the Philly shell. Obviously, Floyd Mayweather speaks for itself. But I've seen the Philly shell destroy careers. Like look at Andre Berto. Jesus, like when he fought Soto Carras, man, I don't know if you guys remember that. That wasn't a Philly shell. That was a C shell.
That was funny. I remember that too. The Guerrero Berto. That's like, I don't know if Berto just thought it was like, hey, this is the new hip thing, but he got his ass beat. Well, I mean, it just didn't work.
It's not like the latest trend, bro. It's like real shit. It's like it's your defense, so you got to really, really be invested in. So. Paul, I think he could, but he has to totally be committed to it, because if not, he'll just be Berto and be like, man, he had a good showing against Canelo, but what the fuck happened? I mean, that's what happened is you can't half-ass your defense, not in boxing, brother.
And Sean, do you think Ward is the one that suggested to Plant that he should incorporate it for this fight?
Okay, yeah. First of all, I say absolutely, because it was unexpected. It was something that would come from somebody that's crafty like an Andre Ward, and I could definitely see Andre Ward doing it. And it's a bold move, and you got to be bold when you're, going into a fight undergunned. So I thought that was a good strategy, but they just didn't have enough time. So if Andre Ward's going to continue to have his back, mentor him for other fights going forward, what a man to have in your corner, irregardless of what. Any fan would think of Andre Ward's, the man. And I think if you can have that as a mentor to help you develop that, I would like to see what Caleb Plant does with it. I think that'd be a great team with the team he already does have in place, not just for that.
And Sean, just for the record, I wanted to say that I think that the Philly shell was a great addition to this fight for Caleb Plant to use this strategy, because if you watch the fight again, I think that we might all agree that had he not used something like this, he would have probably lost in like 2 or 3 rounds,
Yeah, I mean, he had to definitely do something. He doesn't have a lot of pop. And I know, I believe I heard that G Funky on one of his lives, and maybe also been Chicano, that it's almost like Plant was one-handed. He leads with his right so much, like when he's fighting, like a one-handed fighter. So he had to do something to kind of counter, and he's susceptible to being open with that hook. So it makes sense on paper, but execution's what wins you fights, not strategy. Written down. So.
Oh yeah, that was me. But that was an open secret.
Okay, great. Want to give the credit to the right person.
No, but like I
just wanted
said,
to
you know,
add that I think.
go ahead, Nopal.
Go ahead, Chicano. It's cool.
Yeah, man. Sorry about that. We're interrupting each other, but I just wanted to say, man, yeah, it was me, but to me, it was. I feel like it was an open secret. I mean, anybody could see it, and he did. You know, he favored his left hand, like his right hand was there, but it was kind of just like a filler. He used it, you know, but I mean, if you look at Canelo after the fight, man, it looks like he was barely in a fight. I think if Plant had power, this fight might be a lot more interesting, but he didn't, you know, and that's why I stopped assessing the fight. I said the guy doesn't have enough power, doesn't have the stamina, and that's just all I got to see. I'm not going to assess a one-handed fighter fighting Canelo, but like I said, he made a better account of himself than I thought he would, especially like considering the Uzcategui fight. I think he almost did better in this fight than he did in the Uzcategui fight. Like he had great energy, so I was very impressed with Caleb Plant. Did you all catch that whole mid-round conversation? I think it was like in the 8th round on Twitter. They're showing that these guys had a little bit of a brief conversation going. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, the 9th round.
Yeah, the whole like, oh, you're pretty good. Am I pretty good? You know, 21-0. What did you think about that, Sean?
Well, I took it as, I'm just being honest, right? This is El Chile. Like I took that as he wanted validation from the man, you know, that he was worthy of the fight, you know, because his resume wasn't, you know, and that he wanted to kind of have it be said by the person, Canelo, that he's a worthy opponent, you know. I don't really say he was saying trying to get into his head, because he knew at that point where the fight was going. I would like to
Yeah.
believe, you know. So I think it was more about validation, but that's just like, you know, the optics to me. You know, someone may see that differently, but it was for him to get validation, and you know, he got it.
I saw it
Yeah,
that same way, dude. Go ahead, Nopal.
Yeah, you know, as I think about it, and what Sean and you were saying, yeah, I think at that point, Caleb Plant was kind of ready to concede that he was probably going to lose, but he wanted to leave with a little bit of acceptance from somebody a little better. You know what I mean? So I think he was just looking for a little bit of, you know, to kind of a little bit of closure, you know, to say, hey, we're gonna after the fight we can be cool, you know.
Oh yeah, you know, I think it was a little bit of that too. He was already trying to make nice, and you could see that early on when Canelo maybe grazed Plant a little bit low. Plant was falling over himself to touch gloves and be like, "Hey, let's be cool. We're cool," you know. And one of the things I told Nopal offline, and I didn't mention it when we rescored the Trout fight, is I always said like, don't go dirty against Canelo, because I figure, you know, in my mind that Canelo will get dirty. I considered him to be a clean fighter. But just because he's worth all he's worth and he's got all that status, if you go dirty with Canelo, he'll go dirty with you right back at it. And, you know, he showed that in the Trout fight, and then they made good. But, I mean, I don't think Canelo purposely strayed low against Plant, but you could see how fast Plant was ready to make friends. He was ready to make nice in the 9th. And then, you know, I'm glad that they made peace afterwards, because, you know, sometimes I'm sure that these fighters don't ever see each other again. Like, I mean, unless they're at the same promotional event, right? I mean, when are Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo ever going to see each other again? Some of these fighters don't cross paths, I'm sure. So I'm happy that they made nice, you know, and just kind of let it all be water under the bridge. You know, they all got paid. You know, I do think that Caleb Plant should have stuck around for the post-fight interview. I hear rumors that he's been hospitalized and maybe had like a rib fracture. I don't know if any of that's true, but he should have stuck around. Also, he posted on Instagram, and he said some nice things, but he really didn't congratulate the better man, really. I mean, and that's okay, you know. I mean, he's got his own ego, and but like I said, I like Plant more now than I did leading up to the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll say this: like, I came away with an appreciation for what he did, and disappointment that he hadn't done more. You know, but that's kind of like, it's not just him alone; it's his promotional banner. It's the other fighters that are in division that, you know, just they won't fight each other. They keep wanting that fight. I mean, the way to get the fight is to build up your profile, and that's to fight each other. And the fact that they won't do it is disappointing. You know, because before, I mean, I'll be honest, I would think that. I mean, I still think he would beat him. I was kept picking David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant is like by murder. You know, he would just destroy him. But I think it'd be more respectful fight. I think it'd be a lot better fight than I gave it credit for initially. I mean, look how he did against Canelo, and he shows that he can incorporate things. To G Funky's comment, yeah, he wasn't great or good at the or even, you know, above average, but he was holding his own at moments as far as his defense with the Philly shell. But with given time, I would like to see him against other competition. That's without question.
I agree. I think that around his weight class, Plant might be the best at it. I don't think anybody can just decide to start incorporating the Philly shell and do better than Plant is currently doing with it. So he could stand and improve. He's been in there with the best fighter in the world and can take a lot of chingazos. So, I mean, he's learned a lot. And if he's still got the hunger, man, I'm eager to see what he can do. Like, he now has one of the best resumes. I mean, if you fight Canelo, it automatically gives you a better resume. And so, hell, man, if he wants to be a champion again, like you said, yeah, let's see a good fight. In fact, I mean, if he fights a big name like a Charlo or a Benavidez, I mean, that winner could be in line for a rematch. These guys still have time to line themselves up to be the next guy to see, or at least, the guy that we all agree Canelo should see. But none of these guys do anything, man. But that's a whole nother subject. You guys have heard me go on about that, but I'm excited to see what Plant does next. He's continuing on. So, I think that win, of course, it has historical legacy, but I do think that win might age well.
No, I think it would definitely age well. I'm gonna go ahead and say it here on you guys' awesome show. Man, it sounds crazy right now, but I think Plant's gonna be a champion again. Not from Canelo, but I think it would have to be, Canelo were to drop the belts if he went up to 175, something like that. But I could see him before his career is over. Let me just stand by it. Before his career is over, I think Plant will be a champion. There, I said it.
Very nice, man. And you know what, dude? I agree. Because you know what? I don't see Canelo just holding on to all those belts. And if Plant likes 168, hell, if these belts just kind of get spread out again, I could easily see Plant deserving to fight for that championship belt and holding one of the titles. And then I just want to thank everybody for being here, man. I see G Funky in the house. Thank you so much for being here, bro. We got Luis R. Conriquez. We got Apex Predator in the house. Black and Brown, always good to see him, man. So we got a lot of people here just hanging out, dude. We appreciate it. And so we've talked about Canelo going undisputed. And before we move topics, does anybody have anything they'd like to say before we move on regarding Canelo? Nah, man. I guess we're all just still trying to figure out our thoughts on it before we speak even more. We got a lot of time. We have the off season. We have the winter and the spring just to enjoy this win. Canelo doesn't have to do anything. We have a lot of boxing to look forward to. Canelo is the first undisputed champion at the super middleweight division. And speaking of undisputed, man, there's been a little bit of a hot topic going on as to whether Teofimo Lopez is undisputed. And I just wanted to know everybody's thoughts on this. Let's pass it around, man. Run PMC. I'd like to start with you, man. Like, there's this new controversy that some people are considering Teofimo to be illegitimately undisputed, even though he's going around saying that he is. I want to know what your thoughts are on it.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. So Teofimo, I think in the spirit of the law, would be considered the undisputed champion since he beat Lomachenko, and then right before their fight, Lomachenko, whether he was stripped, whether he petitioned, whether Team Haney petitioned, because we've heard people confirm all three of those things. I think Teofimo in the spirit would be considered undisputed, but letter of the law, he's not undisputed because he doesn't have the WBC title officially. He has two belts, which is odd that they shipped him two belts, and Mauricio Suleiman said that one of those was for the franchise and one of those was for just their regular championship, and he confirmed it on several interviews, but then other interviews saying Haney is the actual champion and they need to fight. But then I find it odd that Teofimo or Haney has to petition to fight Teofimo, but why would a champion need to petition a franchise champion or a franchise status WBC boxer, because it isn't really a champion? Why would someone need to petition that person when that person should be able to bypass mandatory, should be able to bypass like all the rankings so they have good standing with the WBC? So it's just confusing to me, but I would love to call him undisputed, but I just can't, just because if you just go on the WBC website, he's not listed as the champion on there. They have a picture of Devin Haney. Do I think he should have been? Yes, but we don't know. Like, no one knows really the business of what went on with Lomachenko and the introduction of the franchise championship. All we do know is that Teofimo has two physical belts from the WBC. He has the ring belt and he has the WBA, WBO, and IBF. And Haney has a physical belt from the WBC, and he's recognized as the lightweight WBC champion of the world. So that's all we know. I'm hoping that fight could be made. Granted, if both the boxers get past their opponents in the fourth quarter of this year, and I hope it would be made early next year, so we could just get it settled, and then they can go on their way.
Absolutely, I second that. Run PMC. I mean, I third that. Hell, yeah, it's really weird. The fact that it keeps being brought up. To me, it's simple math. You have to have 4 of the belts, and he has a lot of belts, but he doesn't have the ones he needs. And I know there's also additional confusion from the fact that Mauricio Suleiman in May, quote unquote, personally told Teofimo dad that he said that the franchise belt is more prestigious, so he took that and ran with it. Oh, it has more, value or worth. But we know that initially when the belt was designed, it was more like a acknowledgement or recognition. It's just like you saying, if you're trying to get an honorary doctor to be a doctor, it's either you get the actual one, but it's an honorary distinction. It's not actually the belt. So, even though I know they want that narrative, the ultimate narrative is they have to fight. So Teofimo Lopez, if he truly wants to be undisputed, to me, by the definition, letter of the law, he has to fight Devin Haney, point blank, period. That's the only way I see it. Irregardless of how people view how Devin Haney got the belt, he still has it, and it needs to be recognized, properly, as we've all stated.
Yeah, I have one more thing. I agree with you, Sean. But when you talk about Haney, I don't view really him. He's by name the WBC lightweight champion of the world, but I don't really view him as a champion, even a title holder, because I don't get how you can just. I don't get how you could even just get interims and elevation, and you're not even fighting a champion. I mean, it wasn't even vacated. They elevated him, and then he fought and defended it. So it wasn't even like the belt went vacant and then he fought for it. So it's just a little bizarre to me. Like I always joke around that I view him as the Union Kane of 135. So I mean, and I like Haney. I think there's a lot of potential, but I just wish they could just fight just so we can get it over with. Because like if either of these, when they fight, whoever wins will obviously get a step up. But then the one that loses, they'll have to get some fights in, but they're nowhere near their career being over. I feel like some of these guys just are afraid to take a loss. Where it's like when you lose against other great boxers, like you see with Plant, your stock might actually rise because you're actually fighting real fighters.
No, absolutely. That's you're preaching to the choir right there, brother. I mean, that's been my thing from the get-go. And it's funny that we talk about found the business model and the roadmap to success laid out by Canelo. He took a tough loss to Mayweather that people like to bring up, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with on social media. Like I think it's the 8th year anniversary of the one. You remember the gold magazine that came out, Ring magazine, of the one. But yeah, Canelo lost that fight, but look how he's gone and his career after that. He had an impressive career before, but he's had an unbelievable career after, and it's just continued to go on. And he grew and he learned from that fight. I mean, I'm not a fan of UFC, but one thing I do respect from them, other than the fact that they're the combat and they know how to reward their fans with good fights, is the fact that losses don't wane opportunity for the fighters and for the fans. There's a lot of good fighters that have losses on their end and they don't crucify them. So the young fighters, I wish they would really embrace that. I mean, there's a good fight coming on this weekend with Rosado, and he has 13 losses. So because people aren't fixated on that, it's more about the quality of the opponent and what they're going to bring to the table. Is going to be entertainment. Is going to be a good fight. It's going to be something that we want to see. Are we going to want to see them? That should be the focus. And for that to happen, they have to fight each other. If not, just avoiding each other, until they feel like the moon is aligned the right way. That's not going to help boxing grow. That's just going to create frustration and leave us with conversations like this. Who's really the champion? When neither of them truly are. You can make that argument as far as being the champion, as far as undisputed. But you're right. I'm with you 100% on PFC as far as how he got it. Yeah, not ideal, but he got it. So they just need to get it on point blank.
Yeah. And last thing for me, and if there is a dispute, then there is no undisputed champion if there is a dispute. So they should end that by just fighting. Simple.
You know what?
Okay.
I was telling people, man, I hate that saying, but I agree with it here. It's like, it's true. There's too much of a dispute, man. Like, in my opinion, when you look at it, you have too many entities saying that he's not undisputed. You have sanctioning bodies, promotional networks. You have actual undisputed champions contesting it. So I agree with what you guys have to say. Before I continue to go, Nopal, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I wanted to say too, man. I hate that expression, but it's there, and I'm gonna use it. There's a dispute. you know, I wanted to say that lineally, that belt belongs to Teofimo, but you can't always go off of that. Like everybody's saying right now, there's a dispute, and you know what? Teofimo's a young man. He should just fight Haney, get it over with, so you could be really undisputed. Which I'll repeat again, lineally, that belt does belong to him because he beat Lomachenko, who actually beat the champ to get that WBC belt. So, like I said, I mean, lineally that belt does belong to him, but there's a dispute. So I agree with everybody. He should just go ahead and fight Haney. And I wanted to say that this is all basically Top Rank and the WBC's fault, because initially when they gave that belt to Canelo, the franchise, it was a very different situation. He had just come off of beating 3 champions in that division. Not exactly, I guess we can't really count Cotto, even though lineally that WBC belt did belong to Cotto. But I mean, he had beaten almost cleaned out the division at 160, and then he chose to drop it because he had some BS with the IBF when they took, a month away from beating Jacobs. He was, they decided to take that belt away because they couldn't come to no kind of negotiations. And then also Charlo was in line to fight Canelo, but we all already saw the situation that happened with Canelo fighting Plant. The only reason that fight got made is because Canelo was not a free agent. So that situation would have never, back then, the Charlo versus Canelo would have never happened back then because Al Heyman would have never let Charlo fight on DAZN. And with a guy with as much juice as Canelo to fight on PBC during that time, that situation would have never happened. So, I think that the WBC invented the franchise designation so they could double dip and charge sanctioning fees from both champions, and I guess maybe they're forced to do that because, the promoters just won't work with each other. So, I think going back to the whole Teofimo thing, I think that it's time that he just concedes and fights Haney. Let's get this fight done as soon as he steamrolls over Kambosos. Let's find a way to make this fight happen, or else, he's always gonna have people criticizing him.
I agree, man. Like, and I've always said, dude, like, people shredded Canelo when he got the franchise belt. Keep in mind, this was after the Jacobs fight, when there was unification, including the WBC belt for 3 belts with Jacobs. After that, he got the franchise belt. And it's not like he ever used it to unify. The guy left the division and has never been back since. So it's not like he used it to unify, but now all of a sudden we're supposed to use the franchise belt to be included in a undisputed designation. To me, that's just not going to work. Like, he's although, like I've always said, and I've always maintained, like, to me, undisputed isn't the end of the world. I always said if Canelo decides to just drop these belts, that's fine by me. I know who the champion is. Ring Magazine and Lino is good enough for me. That's what Teofimo is. So he's the man. I don't consider Devin Haney, just like Run PMC said, I don't consider Devin Haney to be like a real champion. He might have the title, and maybe he could earn his way towards being a champion if nobody does anything at lightweight. But as of right now, Teofimo is the man. I think that he should go back and fight Haney if he wants to. Like, I have a couple of concerns about that. One, dude, I'll tell you, I mean, look at this photo right here. Like, I understand that Canelo's short for his weight class, but he's supposed to be big. But, dude, Teofimo is a big boy for 135, in my opinion. Like, he looks dry to me at the last weigh-in, and he looks huge compared to Loma during the fight. And I just don't know how much longer he can make that weight. I think he should probably move up soon. So if he's not going to fight Haney immediately, there's no shame in not being, quote unquote, undisputed at 135 or not necessarily being the first Latino to go undisputed. And I know that probably hurts him because I mean that's awesome and that's historical. So he didn't really quite get it. It's not really his fault. He did what he had to do. You know, he brought his belt. Lomachenko did what he did leading up to that fight too. So Teofimo is the man. There's no shame in being a unified #1 ranked Ring Magazine champion at lightweight, and he is the champion. But he's not undisputed. If we're just going to talk about undisputed itself and how we all agree its designation to be, like I can't give that to him. But to me, it doesn't really matter that much. But historically, I have to say no, he's not undisputed.
Yeah, and like we said, this could be fixed very, very soon. Teofimo fights at the end of November, and then the next weekend in Vegas, Devin Haney fights. So if both of them win, why doesn't Teofimo just get in the ring in Vegas? I think he lives in Vegas because he trains out there, and then just call out Devin Haney, have that fight for whatever February, and them sort of stay in camp. Have like, I don't know how they run their camps, but they're both will probably be in shape. But what I think might happen is I think Teofimo is going to have an easier. He's going to do better against Kambosos than Haney will against JoJo, and I just this is just my gut feeling. I think they might. One of the camps might just push it back. I don't know if that's going to be the Haney camp or not, but I think Tio's going to whitewash Kambosos because I don't really think that much of him. I thought Mickey Bay did really, really well off him, whatever, 2 years ago plus 3 years ago at this point. And I think JoJo's coming in there with some fire, so I don't know how Haney's really going to do with him. He might win by decision, but I don't think he's going to hurt him at all because JoJo, like, even though he started at 126, he's definitely grown into it, and he looks pretty strong in there, especially as of late. And he bullied Fortuna in there. So, and I think Fortuna has more strength than Haney. So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I would like to see it happen, but part of me thinks it won't. But if it does, it needs to happen the first quarter of next year.
All right, man. Well, I'd like to give a shout out to the Boxing Historian 206. Hey, man, nice to see you, bro. And I've been catching your post-fight coverage. Thank you so much for joining us, dude. And hey, dude, let's move on. Like, it's all right. There's a bunch of gold here. There's no shame in what these guys got going on. They're both very successful. And they deserve to get praise regardless of their actual status, man. I mean, these guys are cleaning up divisions. And hey, if everybody cleaned up divisions, the sport would be better for it, and we'd be seeing all kinds of great fights, man. So salute to both of these fighters. I'm a big Teofimo Lopez fan in general. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about, man, is it seems to me like there's a little bit of trouble at the Robert Garcia Academy. Now, I'm sure everybody's heard the news. It sounds like Virgil Ortiz has left the Robert Garcia Academy. And I just wanted to get into this. You guys know that I have a history of bitching and moaning about Robert Garcia and what he's got going on. Plus, you all know what I had to say about the Mikey Garcia fight last. And so I want to continue this. I want to start with Nopal. Nopal, Virgil Ortiz has left Robert Garcia. I want to know your thoughts, man. What do you think about this?
Man, it's not even a surprise. We've been saying that this was going to happen since like 2 fights ago. And I think that the nail in the coffin was basically that that Robert wasn't in his corner than that one fight. And, I think that, regardless of the situation, if you got a signature fighter, you got to be there for him because you're getting your fee, you're charging him. So you might as well, be there for him on his fights. And, I think it was a good move because I think that there's certain things and giving them attention that just Robert Garcia isn't probably doing, Robert's probably got about 100 fighters that he's training, and they all want a little bit of his time, but this just happened to be one of his top fighters, basically his signature fighter that he has right now. And so, like I said, I mean, it ain't no big surprise. And we'll see where Virgil goes. He's got a lot of options to look for a trainer,
Yeah, but we both know what you want deep down, right?
Well, I'd like him to go to the Reynoso camp, but again, I don't want that to turn into a situation too where Reynoso starts not having enough time with each one of their fighters. They already got Andy, they already got Canelo. Who else do they got? They got Frank Sanchez. They have they got Ryan Garcia. Each one of these guys deserves
Valdez.
Valdez also. I mean, each one of these guys deserves to have his undivided attention when they have their fights. So again, I don't want this to become the same type of Walmart / RGBA situation, you know? I don't, you know, that's basically what I'm saying about it.
Hey, man, I agree, dude. There was some missteps going on with the Robert Garcia Academy, and I'm okay with them. Like, if Robert Garcia has his own line of thinking, just like we all should, and he thinks to himself, okay, well, I'm going to go to this other guy's fight because, hey, Virgil's got this, and we trained him, so I'm going to send my son Pita, and he's going to represent the Robert Garcia Academy, and we're going to get his name announced for a very high-profile fight, in my opinion. He is the next big star to come out of the Robert Garcia Academy. Mikey Garcia was on the verge of making a comeback, but on top of that, that might have also been a consideration. I mean, Mikey Garcia, regardless of what you think happened in that fight, made a very bad account of himself. For some reason, Pito's working the pads with Mikey before this fight in the locker room, and it's like, well, I mean, if Mikey's not ready to go, I don't know why you got Pito working on the 1-2. I mean, couldn't Robert have assessed that his brother wasn't ready to go? Like, I mean, if who's going to get more attention than Mikey Garcia? And why wasn't Mikey Garcia being pushed more in the corner? Like, to me, it's just like, I don't know if he just got too lax. And, to me, Robert Garcia seems like a really nice guy, but there's something weird going on over there, man. On top of that, too, Mikey Garcia embarrassed himself just recently, for no reason, just posted a picture on Instagram. I don't know if you guys all saw it, of him saying that he was sick leading up to the Spence fight. And it's like, well, nobody asked and nobody cared. So it's like, I think that, they're licking their wounds a little bit over there. This is the post, he goes, oh yeah, no excuses. Okay. No excuses, but you post this. Like, nobody's asking, dude. But a win over a stick lightweight was your biggest victory. I mean, that's saltiness all around. And as far as Virgil goes, I think he made the right choice. I think that it was insulting to have Pita in that corner, who all he had to offer, as far as I could hear, was like, oh, don't worry, we still got time. It's early. I'm like, well, I could have said that shit. You know what I mean? There's nothing that, he was told, in my opinion, from Pita that could have helped him. His dad was handling things. And I think Virgil Ortiz Sr. has already shown that he wants the best for his son. He's willing to go to trainers that are willing to elevate what his son can do. And he's going to continue on doing that. And so I think they're making the smart choice together and moving on. They need to be shown a different look. JC made this point. He says that Ortiz maxed out with Robert, and I agree. If he's not going to get the exclusive attention he deserves, and according to Robert Garcia, Virgil Ortiz is the hardest worker in that gym. So if he's not going to be pushed, and he's the one leading the way, and he's not getting the exclusive A-side attention, he needs to move on, plain and simple, man. So I'm happy for him. Sean, what do you think, man? I know I'm a little biased, so I'm going to go to the more neutral people. We got Sean and Run PMC, the ones who keep it real for us. So, give it to us, Al Chile. What do you think about all this?
First of all, the way it all went down was very jarring and shocking, because it was Friday night. Michaela Mayer, was the main event on ESPN Top Rank. And so, women are trying to, get their shine in boxing. And wow, this totally took my attention. And on top of that, my brother and I were covering like a local event too. So it was all the buzz. So the way it went down, and then the back and forth with commentary, like, with the screenshots, I wasn't really prepared for that. Now, with that all being said, the aftermath of it, I feel good about. And one thing also too, I know that you've been critical as far as some areas of opportunity for Robert Garcia. And I agree. Like, there's some definitely wear and tear that's kind of showing, because he does have so many fighters in his stable and so many to be responsible for. And he got a little bit relaxed, possibly. But his explanation in the video that he put out, well, he had to put out because, the news got, and it kind of had taken to a life to its own, that he had to come out there and explain what happened. And even though I don't agree with his logic and his thinking of, I wanted to be there, for Franco, because it was a championship fight, and it was, we were Golden Boy in his Top Rank, and I mean, he made a lot of sense. But at the same time, he even said within the statement on his little 18-minute video that he did on his channel, is that other people in boxing were advised him not to do it. And he was even, so it wasn't like he just made the decision, didn't tell nobody. I mean, clearly you have to involve other people. So he made a mistake. He owned up to it. But at the end of the day, I think it benefits Virgil. And from the standpoint, I think JC made a comment that I do feel like, Virgil had got the most out he could. The defensive liabilities, I think, were also too. That's another thing. Let's just be honest. Virgil got hurt in that fight, multiple times. So it wasn't like he just went there and whitewashed, Mean Machine Kavalauskas. I mean, he had trouble. So Peter just clapping his hands and say, "We'll get there. Be patient." Like you said, my little son could do that. He needed more guidance, more specific, techniques of what he could do. And he dug deep and he got it because he's Virgil Ortiz. But that could have been catastrophic. So I think that was jarring. The fact he wasn't there magnified what there's other possibilities. And I think that, I know Eddie Reynoso does have a lot in his camp, but I do think that ultimately will be the decision that he'll go with, because I think not just from the boxing standpoint, but we also talk about marketability. Let's just be honest, if you're near Canelo, you're near the sun, you get the most shine. So I think it'd be a way to also raise his level and his profile as well, not just as a boxer, but as a brand and as a name. He has to think in those terms. I mean, we coined the phrase here in Texas, future of boxing, from Grand Prairie, Texas, and to truly be the future of boxing, it has to be the world, figure. You have to be a profile that people can recognize worldwide, and you have to establish that early on, right now while he's going into his development. And, I wish him well. The way it went down, crazy, but it worked out for the best as of right now. We'll see who he ultimately decides and what happens next. But I'm happy with the decision.
Yep, it's my turn with this one. It's an interesting thing. I mean, I think Robert Garcia made the right decision with sticking with Franco. Honestly, he turned Franco pro, and he's been his trainer ever since he turned pro. So I think he was right for sticking with him for his fight. But at the same time, when you make those decisions, just know there might be consequences. And then that's what happened. Virgil didn't like it. And it's because it sounded like it was the son that didn't like that Robert didn't go to his fight. And just know that with your decision, something might happen that might not be for your best interest. And they felt that they needed to make a move, and they did, which is, I mean, no one knows Virgil as much as his dad, and his dad thinks they need to make a move. They make a move. It's not the first move they made. They made the move from Joel Antonio Diaz to Robert Garcia when Robert opened his gym out in Riverside. And if he goes to Reynoso, it most likely, just based on how it's going, it probably won't be the last move he makes in his career. And I don't fault him for that too, because Virgil Senior is still labeled, like when they do the intro, I think, as his head trainer. And we've seen this before, like being like, if we talk about just like a relevant fighter coming up, Sean Porter. Sean Porter's been trained by his dad, but he was throughout USA Boxing getting trained by a ton of other people as well. He used to be Manny Pacquiao's one of his sparring partners back in like 2009 through 11. So he was training out with Freddie and training out those guys at Wildcard. He moved to Vegas. He trained with Eddie Mustafa Muhammad at the Hit Factory. He's trained with Rodney Chrysler. He's held camps out in Washington D.C. with Barry Hunter and Coach Harris. So it's not like it's a new thing for guys to go around to trainers. But the thing that was mentioned already is that Virgil might run into the same issues no matter where he goes, unless he's the number one. So it might be better if he just is looking for, as like these other trainers, as a consultant, not actually like as their head trainer, where his dad stays the head trainer, but he just might have camps at different, like 1 or 2 camps at a different gym, go to another one. He's just trying to gain knowledge and maybe just take a few things from each trainer. Maybe he'll end up sticking with one and they'll be the second, but just know if the trainer is going to be your second and not your head trainer, they're probably going to go to the other fighters that they have in their stable, which they're the primary trainer for. So, I mean, wish them Robert Garcia and his gym best of luck, Virgil best of luck. And I mean, it didn't seem like anything was they have any hard feelings. Robert Garcia said yesterday on ES News, one interview that they were doing, that's like no hard feelings. They had to make the move. He respects it. Won't be the first. Isn't the first person that left, and won't be the last. And the door is always open. So it seems like they're cool. But in the end, like, it's business, right? And they only have a short time at the top. And Virgil's trying to get to the top. And boxing is a dangerous game. So it's very serious. It isn't just like he's selling a business where they're selling whatever. He's like a baker and he's selling donuts or something. This is real like life and death stuff. So I don't fault either for the decision.
Me either, man. It's like I said, Robert Garcia is also entitled to his own line of thinking, man. So no real bad guys here, but I do think that Robert Garcia and his camp, they're kind of leaving a peak, man. They had a bunch of hot up and coming fighters, big names. And right now, I mean, with Ramiro, like there's a ton of fighters, but I'm sure they'll get there again, if he continues to stay popular and people continue to respect what he brings to the table and his knowledge. Hey, man, they could have another run of just like premier names there, but not right now. That it's kind of like a rebuilding phase, and there's a bunch of other champions or contenders in his camp still. So, hey, I'll look forward to seeing them. I like the talent anyways. I always like seeing the best fight the best, so I'm looking forward to see what comes out of the Robert Garcia camp in the future. I mean, I definitely know him. When I see Robert Garcia, I see that South Coast Mitsubishi sign everywhere. I'm like, oh shit, Robert Garcia is up in the house. All right, man. And so I'll tell you guys what, dude, it's time for us to do a little bit of a preview. Right now we have Gabriel Rosado versus Jaime Munguia this weekend, and I wanted to cover it and see what you guys think about this fight. It's kind of an interesting one. A lot of people have some good opinions on it, so let's talk about it, man. Sean, please tell us your thoughts on this upcoming fight.
Yeah, first of all, I'm very excited about the fight. I think it's really going to be, an action-packed fight. I'm good. Rosado is on a hot streak right now. He's a really, professional fighter, and I mean that with all due respect. I mean, he's seen it all, done it, and he's a really strong boxer. The thing with him, sometimes he kind of gets caught up in his own boxing. He'll overbox, and he kind of gets into a zone where he won't break out of his shell, which he'll have to, and that's why I like it so much, because what he's the most exciting to me is when he gets out of his comfort zone, and Munguia is going to force it because of his offense. And Munguia, with all due respect to him, even with the changes of the corners, he's got some defensive liabilities. Even though he's worked on them, they're not like they were. I think this is going to make for an interesting matchup. And of course, you got the Mexico-Puerto Rico rivalry. My brothers are excited for this one as well. Right now, I'm leaning. I mean, you could ask me like 30 minutes from now, I may change it. But right now, I'm leaning Rosado because, he is on, he came off that dramatic KO victory. And I think he's in a good zone right now. And I think the liabilities may be a bit much. I think that Rosado's a good enough boxer where he can eke out a win. But it's kind of a toss-up for me. But I'm leaning Rosado. But, it wouldn't surprise me either way. But I'm definitely looking forward to it.
All right, man. Run PMC, what do you think about this fight, man?
I feel the same way. Definitely a toss-up fight. But I'm also leaning Rosado as of right now. I've been a Gabriel Rosado fan ever since the lead up to Sekal Pal, and then he used to have the Russell Peltz cards used to be on. They used to stream them online. I forgot what service it was, but they were free streams out in Philadelphia. So I watched Rosado for a while, and then leading up to Triple G, he had a few videos he was putting out on YouTube about his training camp and everything. And it's just a bit of fan for Rosado. He's gotten the sort of screwed in a few fights. I think he beat Luis Arias. I think he was sort of taken over in the Peter Quillen fight, and then they stopped it on a cut, but he was willing to go. He got screwed on the Jalen Love fight because Rosado, I thought, won that fight, especially when he knocked him down, but then they gave it to Love. Then Love popped for banned substance. I think it was a diuretic, and they gave him a no contest. But Rosado is definitely a road warrior, and I think he's found something with Freddie Roach. He's looked really good his last few fights, and that's another boxer that's been with Benny Briscoe. He's been with Fernando Vargas. He sort of bounced around trainer for trainer. He was with Jesse Reed for a little bit too out in LA. So he's definitely gaining knowledge, and I think he might be at his pinnacle right now, even though he is older, his body has a lot of wear and tear, and he is coming down in weight to 160 from the last fight that was at 168. And I remember back when he fought Quillen, Fight Hype had a glove selection video where him and Quillen were selecting gloves after, and he was down in water or Pedialyte or whatever that was. He had 2 big gallons, and that was when they were at 60 back then. And let me check when he fought Quillen. I think that was had to be 2013, 2014. Yeah, 2013. The 26th of October. So that's a long time ago. It's 8 years, and now he's going back down to 168. And then Jaime's sort of settling at that weight. So we might see Rosado try to blitz him early because he might not have the stamina late because the weight drain. Because I'm interested to see if DAZN has the unofficial weights, but he might be up 20 pounds, upwards of 20 pounds on fighting at 180. So it'll be interesting to see, but 50-50 fight, but I'm going Rosado in this one.
Hey, man, if you think it's a 50-50 fight and you're a betting man, you might want to put a little bit down, man. I'm telling you. No, Paul, what do you think, brother?
Well, Rosado's the underdog that everybody wants to root for, man. He's got one of them interesting careers, I always thought that had he not gotten cut so bad, he would have actually survived the Triple G fight and made it to the 12th round. On this one, basically, I'm gonna call it a 55% chance for Munguia to win and a 45% for Rosado. Who I'm rooting for? I really made the best man win on this one. I think I'll be happy with either one winning. You know.
Yeah, dude. I'd have to say that, dude. I'm going for Munguia. I'm picking him to win. For some reason, and it's I don't know the guy, and he hasn't made too many comments that I've heard that would piss me off. But I just, for some reason, I don't like Rosado. I think if I had to think back, I think it's because I felt like he quit against Triple G. I don't even remember if that was like necessarily a doctor stoppage. I don't remember exactly, but I remember not liking that. Plus, at the time, I felt he was a little washed after that, and I felt like he was tying up fights that I wanted to see just because he was getting fights. And I really didn't care for that too much, and looking at Rosado, dude, I love a resurgence, a renaissance of somebody's career, but I think it's a little bit of a smokescreen. If you look at his last 10 fights, he's pretty much 5-5, and he's winning and losing every other fight. It's not like he's necessarily on a winning streak. A lot of people thought he beat Jacobs. I'll be honest, I didn't even care to watch the fight. If it was a split decision, all I can say is that maybe Danny Jacobs wasn't taking him seriously. Before that, he lost to Sulecki, and before that, it was a draw. And then, I mean, it's just, his record's all over the place. So I think the idea that he's like on a winning streak is slightly misleading. Like, I wouldn't say, oh man, this guy's on a winning streak. Certainly not. Munguia's young, he's in his mid-20s. And obviously Rosado's getting a little bit older. He's got 13 losses. He's 35 years old. I'm happy for him that he's making his money, but I mean, the odds makers tell you that they think Munguia is going to win this one. I also think that he's going to win this one. And I think Rosado, I think he's kind of like the opponents that Jamal Charlo was getting for a little bit, where it's like, oh, well, he lost his last one, but he looked really good, and some people say he won, so it's a suitable opponent, kind of like Deveryanchenko, kind of like Dennis Hogan, and I feel like that's one of those opponents like this. I think that Rosado's kind of serving as that piece for Munguia to improve. I don't know if Munguia can improve. A lot of people criticize his style. I've always liked him. He comes to bring it. I also want more out of him. I don't think I'll get it, but I'm enjoying the ride.
That's a great point, brother. I love the breakdown as far as like truly looking on a granular level, as far as like when people are saying the run. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the knockout, and that, don't worry about going back and looking at Daniel Jacobs' fight. You'll fall asleep. It was an exciting fight. I think it's also too, like, let's be honest, as far as fight fans, as far as boxing fans, even when we're talking about Caleb Plant, what set our expectations is how we felt about his performance. He lost majority of the rounds, clearly, right? So it's about the expectations, and I think that also kind of sets the bar for how people look at Rosado. So I think your assessment is very fair.
All right, man. Anybody got anything else on that before we move on?
Last thing would be, I agree, Rosado's he's definitely been through the gauntlet and is sort of hit and miss on his performances, because like in the Jacobs fight, he could have pushed it more and made it more decisive that he was winning, but he was like playing like, I don't know, he's like running out the clock. It was sort of odd to me. And Jacobs did the same thing, which is bizarre to me. But I think ever since he joined Freddie Roach, which was with the Ochoa fight, he's had better performances and more consistent performances, because he's actually stuck with the trainer and wasn't really flip-flopping like every other fight, then going back to the old trainer. So I think it might be beneficial that he's stuck in Freddie Roach's camp for a little bit, and this is going to be the fourth fight coming. But like I said, I still think it's 50-50 though.
All right, man. Well, hey, looking forward to that one. Either way, it should be exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. And hell, we have a nice string of fights coming up as we get to the new year, man. So I'm just settling in every weekend, enjoying the cold weather and the fights every Saturday. So definitely looking forward to it, man. And I'm glad that they're both going to be making some money. Plus, hey, can't go wrong with Mexico versus Puerto Rico, man. And so what I'd like to do next is move on to our controversial rescore. We have Timothy Bradley versus Ruslan Prevognikov. And to set the stage, we got Run PMC. Run, please take it away.
Alrighty, I was excited to score this one. Just putting it out there, this is one of my favorite matches to watch that were in the 2000s. That being next to Berto Ortiz, the first fight, and Angulo Kirkland. This one I think probably, I don't know, it's either between this one and Berto or an Ortiz, but this is a great one. And this is between, as Chicano said, Timothy Bradley and Ruslan Prevognikov, and it occurred March 16, 2013 at the at the time it was called the Home Depot Center in Carson, California. So it's gone through a few name changes, but I sort of always know it as the Home Depot Center in Carson. This was actually Bradley's first defense of his WBA title that he won for Manny Pacquiao. Quote unquote controversially, I didn't think it was that controversial 9 months earlier. This was also what turned out to be a classic matchup of trainers, because Freddie Roach in Provodnikov's corner, who was also obviously the trainer of Manny Pacquiao, and then Joel Diaz, the trainer of Timothy Bradley, for two of the Manny Pacquiao fights. So it definitely ended up being a Southern California battle of trainers. Pat Russell, our referee. And then one thing that I think it's important to think about was that this fight, even though we can get into this rescoring after this fight, people looked at Tim Bradley as being shot. They thought he was done. They thought when his next fight, when he's going to fight Marquez, that Marquez would knock him out from the punishment he's sustained in this fight. And then that goes on to probably being one of Bradley's best performances against Juan Marquez, which probably, in my opinion, was the end of Timothy Bradley's prime. So this definitely was a crucial fight in the trajectory of Timothy Bradley's career, which I think sort of possibly cut his prime short. But we definitely saw great work from Tim Bradley in this fight. And then one thing that I want to set out just for context was, from the casual fans' perspective, in 2009, it seemed like sort of boxing, there was still stuff going on in boxing, but it seemed like Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather were sort of were the center of attention, at least from like 140 to 154. Boxers were still winning titles and still doing things, but it seemed like they were always focusing on if they can get a fight with either of the two boxers. So at this time, at early 2013, Floyd is training for Robert Guerrero, and Manny Pacquiao is coming off a knockout loss to Juan Marquez. So really, at this time, it was really set for Tim Bradley to possibly take that second spot in the welterweight division behind Floyd Mayweather, and he had a great performance here. But the problem was I went back and did some research, was that he was getting tons of hate. Like, we lived through it, so we saw the hate Timothy Bradley was getting after his win of Manny Pacquiao. But when I went to get like quote unquote objective research and look at like what Ring Magazine was ranking him in 2000 at the end of 2012, so leading into this fight, which is early 2013, they had Bradley as the 8th overall welterweight at the end of 2012, and mind you, he was holding a title. He had the WBL belt, and he was ranked 8th. So I could just run through them real quick. Floyd Mayweather, number 1. He came off a win over Cotto. Juan Manuel Marquez, number 2, win over Pacquiao. They had Robert the Ghost Guerrero 3 with his win over Berto. Manny Pacquiao 4 with his win over, or his loss to Bradley. Kell Brook 5 with his win over Saldivia. Paulie Malignaggi, when he beat Pablo Cesar Cano, where I thought he lost that fight, and he got dropped late in the fight. And then John Zavik, who was really inactive up in that point and lost to Berto in 2011, and then Bradley, then Victor Ortiz, and then Devin Alexander, who also had a belt when he beat Randall Bailey, because when Randall Bailey beat Mike Jones by knockout, that was for the vacant IBF belt. So it was just sort of bizarre to me that he was ranked so low. And for context, in 2011, the previous year when Bradley was at 140, he had the WBC and the WBO coming off the Alexander win, and he was ranked number 1 at 140. So he went from beat Alexander and then beat Casamayor and then beat Manny Pacquiao, gained a belt, and then drops from 1 to 8. So it was just sort of odd to me, and it was just sort of just wanted to lay out some of the context going into this, because it was just I've never seen, I think, more hate to Tim Bradley or to a boxer after was shown to Tim Bradley after the Pacquiao fight. And Tim Bradley really was in this fight, in my opinion, out to prove something, because he came in for war just because he wanted to show him that he's just not gonna. He wanted to prove his name. And I mean, I might have been overanalyzing at the point, but I was watching training videos. I think they were or maybe on Top Rank's boxing channel leading into this fight, and I saw Bradley, who wore Grant gloves up until this point for all his title fights. I'm like, oh, he's training in Reyes. And then when he came out in Reyes, I'm like, for some reason, I feel like he's just going to start throwing down, and that's what we got. So what do you guys have for the scorecards?
Oh, man, that was great stuff. Thank you for the context, man. That's one hell of a thing to hear about the disrespect. Thank you so much. Sean, let's start with you, man. Like, how'd you enjoy the fight, man, and what'd you score it?
Before we went online, I was thanking you guys, Run PMC thank you for suggesting this fight to rewatch. I tell everybody, if you're kind of down or you watch a fight, you're like, man, you want to get that bad, maybe not so brawl, action-packed fight out of your system. You want to watch something. I mean, just put this bad boy in there and just enjoy it. I mean, awesome action, really great. And I think the context at Run PMC is very important because the mindset of a fighter going into any fight, but especially off of what you think would be a life-changing victory, was actually, had the opposite effect. I mean, he got a lot of hate, a lot of people doubting him, and he probably had his own self-doubt as well. I mean, he actually ballooned up to 180 pounds. So going into it, which he's known for actually being in shape. I know in the second fight for the Pacquiao fight, Bradley went to a vegan diet and got real trim. But going to this fight, he was like at a fat camp, so he was at 180. And, he was in a bad place mentally. And yeah, but as far as the fight, unbelievable. And it's weird. It's just how it switches gears. Like you're watching the fight, like, okay, Bradley's trying to box from the outside, use the jab and use his boxing skills to kind of keep the distance. And, he's going to, just kind of box his shoes off and, show him different angles. And then it just shifts like right in the middle of the first. The knockdown happens and it's just unbelievable action. I don't know if what switch kind of triggered that for Bradley to prove a point, and that's kind of how I've always viewed the fight. I'd like to hear your perspective on that. Is like, let me show you. I can show you better than I can tell you. I'm a warrior. I'm a fighter, and I deserve the praise you're not giving me. And that's how I went through, and I've always processed the fight. But as far as the fight itself, I gave the first 2 rounds to Provodnikov. I did count that as a knockdown. That wasn't a slip, especially because he rolled back. So I always thought that was kind of weird. Then there was a huge swing and miss in the second round, which I feel like would have decapitated Bradley by Provodnikov, but I still gave, because he was hurt again. So gave Ruslan the first 2 rounds. Then I gave Bradley because he started boxing and kind of getting his distance away. Another interesting point, too, is that Bradley switched to a southpaw stance within the 3rd round, which seemed to kind of throw off the action of Provodnikov. He kind of punched himself out, but I think it was also him making adjustments because Bradley was, switched up on him on the southpaw. But what happened, I think that backfired because in the 6th round, the adjustments were made by Provodnikov, and he came back on, and I thought he had huge rounds in 7 and 8. Real quick on that too, and I didn't even remember this because it's such a badass fight. People actually booed in the 8th round because there was so much action and there was a lull because they were both punched out at that point, but then it kicked back up again. So yeah, Provodnikov, I gave him 1, 2, 7, 8, and I gave him, of course, the 12th round. Where I didn't look like Bradley was going to be able to get up, and I scored at 114, 113. Amazing fight, unbelievable, and just a legendary fight coming off a legendary controversial upset.
Oh man, great stuff, dude. And Run PMC, how'd you have it, man?
Yeah, definitely a close fight. I had it 8 rounds to 4. Timothy Bradley with a 115, 112. Funny thing was that I'm looking what rounds I gave to Provodnikov. I gave Provodnikov rounds 2. I gave him round 6, 11, and 12. We can have a discussion after we go over the scorecards, but I didn't give him round 1. I marked that as a close round. And the reason I didn't give him round 1 was because even though Bradley did fall down after they did the break and after Provodnikov landed, I thought Bradley was dominating that round. And since it was ruled that Bradley slipped, I viewed that as the same thing if someone were to just roll their ankle and then fall down. And Provodnikov I just didn't think he did enough in that round. I did mark it as close, but I didn't give Provodnikov that round because it wasn't a knockdown. And when I score rounds, I just base it off of what the referee says it is. Because I know sometimes you'll hear especially back then HBO commentary say, well, let's see if they ruled it a knockdown. But it's I always go by sort of the rule that you go with what the referee says. Even if you don't agree it's a knockdown, you have to give them an 8 to 10 round and vice versa. If you think it's a knockdown, you have to go around the referee says, but that's just what I do when I score. But yeah, definitely a close fight. I think the 6th round is definitely that's where you see when they show this fight. And I think that a lot of people might, when they view this fight, they might think of just that 6th round where you see Bradley against the ropes and he's throwing wildly and then Provodnikov's throwing on him. and then you just see him sort of flexing at the end of the round, and that's sort of what I think a lot of people look to encapsulate this fight. But I thought it was, for the most part, a clear Bradley victory with very big moments from Provodnikov, but I thought Bradley won clearly. It was close on the scorecards. I had it 115, 112, 8-4. So if I would have given Provodnikov that first round, it would have been 114, 113, 7-5 in favor of Bradley still. But I could see, how you have it close either way.
Great stuff.
Oh yeah, and Nopal, man, what'd you think of this fight, man? This barn burner.
Man, I absolutely love this fight. You know, it reminds you of the old days of HBO. And I scored this fight 114 to 113 for Ruslan Provodnikov. You know, I was scoring this, I was kind of expecting because I know initially I have always thought that Ruslan kind of got robbed. So I did agree this was very controversial, but so round one I scored it for Provodnikov, and I think Bradley started off winning the round, and towards the end there was a shift of momentum, and it wasn't like a small shift; it was a big shift. So I scored that round for Provodnikov, but I can understand if anybody else scored it for Bradley. Round two, Bradley was visibly hurt the whole round, so you know you see a shift in willpower and momentum. So sometimes I can see why the judges give around to certain fighters. And Ruslan won the first minute very dominantly, and the rest of the round he continued to basically win it. But I could also see that Provodnikov was taking some punches, but nevertheless, I give him round two as well. Round three, I think that Provodnikov took that round off maybe to conserve energy, and this is when you see an excellent display of Bradley's punches. So I gave that round to Bradley. Round four, I gave that to Bradley. Again, his display of punches and awesome footwork, and he continued to get it the whole round. I think that round that Prevognikov did end up landing 4 or 5 big shots, but still not enough to win the round. Round 5, I gave it to Bradley. Round 6, I think Bradley started off the round good, but towards the end, again that shift in momentum, he was almost knocked down, so I had to give that round to Provodnikov, even though Provodnikov looked to start to take some wear and tear there. Round 7, again, there was Bradley was still visibly hurt, so I ended up. That's probably going to be a controversial round right there, because of the shift in momentum. I thought that that alone won the round for Provodnikov. So you guys might not agree with me on that one. Round 7, rounds 8, 9, and 10. I gave all those to Bradley. I thought those were his best rounds. And then round 11, I gave that. Again, Bradley got visibly hurt again, and I thought that Provodnikov won that round. And then round 12, absolutely wow, man. That's all I put on that one as my notes for round 12. I mean, Bradley ended up getting knocked down. So as I tally everything up, I scored it 6 rounds apiece, but obviously the knockdown, sealed the deal for me. But I also understand if anybody thinks that Bradley won this fight, I think that round 7 would be the deciding factor for me. And again, it might not make sense why I scored that for Provodnikov. I just thought that Bradley was just, surviving that round and was still visibly hurt from the 6th. And so that alone, I just gave the round to Provodnikov.
I gave that round to Prevognikov too, brother. I gave him 7 as well.
Oh, okay. I think our scorecards were pretty similar, huh, Sean?
Yeah, because after the 7th round, because people are bloodthirsty. That's when the 8th round. That's when people started booing. Like, damn, gangsters.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. And that's one of the reasons I was glad to watch this fight, because sometimes we're there to watch a fight. We've been watching a lot of sweet science lately, and that's great. But sometimes I want to see the chingazos fly, because that's what we're there to see. We're there to see a fight. And so, man, I was thoroughly impressed with this one because it had action, power, aggression, and sweet science in it as well. I scored it 114, 113 for Bradley. I had it almost exactly the way Run PMC scored it, except for round one. I scored that one for Prevognikov. I've come to learn about myself that, when I'm scoring a fight, if it gets towards the end, like the last minute, last 30 seconds, if an opponent gets the other fighter in trouble, then, and I think that they're like saved by the bell in a way, like they're lucky that they got out of the round, then I'll give that round to the other fighter, the one who was coming on strong. If somebody steals a round, that's a little different. And by stealing, I don't even really mean stealing. Like when I say stealing around, I mean like, well, it's up in the air and somebody goes in there with a flurry. That wasn't what this was. Like Prevognikov was in there handling business, and man, he was stunning Bradley. So I had to give that first round to Prevognikov. And I just thoroughly enjoyed this fight, man. I had to remember to write down my notes on some of these rounds because I was just getting into it. And even though I vaguely remember like how the fight went, there was still some moments of suspense for me, even though I know how it ultimately played out and who got the decision. I found myself wondering how Bradley was going to come back. I enjoyed watching Joel Diaz yell at his ward to, hey, dude, do what we practiced. You got to chill out and box for the first few rounds. Like, do what we talked about, man. I love the way Joel Diaz yells at Bradley, man. So it's cool to see those two work together, while Bradley's also doing his own thing. And yeah, I also was wondering why Prevognikov kind of let off the gas. I'm not sure if he was tired or conserving his energy. I just don't remember that much about him before that fight to know about his tank. I just don't, but he did let off, and another thing too, speaking of corner work, is I felt like Roach just didn't have enough time to really like give instruction, or maybe he didn't know what to tell him. But I felt like by the time they got situated and Roach got in front of Prevognikov and they got the translator going, it was just like a couple words. Like he really wasn't giving much instruction except to like go at him, push him back. We need a knockout, like stuff like that. I mean, there just wasn't too much advice in the corner, in my opinion. And well, then again, maybe there was nothing that he could do. Bradley was on his A game, and he had a momentum that he could keep up all night, man. He's truly an athlete. Bradley could just dance. And the other thing too I wanted to mention was like when I was looking at the power disparity, like that's the power disparity that I feel like people talk about when they give Pacquiao the Bradley fight in their first encounter. Everybody makes it seem like, oh shit, here comes Pacquiao in the last minute with this vaunted power. But like when I scored that fight, I really didn't see it. I thought that Bradley had equal nice stiff punches against Pacquiao. But here there was a disparity. You could see where Prevognikov was thudding Bradley, and Bradley was severely affected by it. So I thought it was interesting how, the commentary can be a little biased. We're talking about one of the same opponents for both fights, and so I thought that was interesting when I watched it. I thought, well, this is when somebody actually comes on, right? And I didn't really see that with the Pacquiao fight, and that's why I scored that fight for Pacquiao. But for this one, I gave Prevognikov rounds for that reason, but I still had Bradley winning the fight in a close but clear decision. I don't know if this is considered to be too controversial, but I can tell you I'm very grateful that I watched it.
No, absolutely, man. It was a treat. I mean, it's an unbelievable fight, and I'm gonna go ahead and say something out there, and hopefully no one holds this against y'all because y'all got a great show. But after watching this fight and then looking back at the resume of Tim Bradley, and then looking at the difference and different style that he showed against a one-male Marquez and was able to box him with the up jab, and the performance he had there. I mean, is Tim Bradley a Hall of Famer? I would say so for me. I mean, based off his resume.
Oh, definitely. I don't think there's any question, especially looking back now based on what fighters are doing now and being able to just go back and look at his resume. Like, I'll be honest, I wasn't paying as much attention back then, although I did always follow Bradley. But now looking back, I go, oh, shit, he fought that guy? I don't even remember that. He fought that guy, and these are names I recognize,
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, impressive resume, impressive career in general, man. Like, Bradley, he really did. I mean, I know he was with Top Rank, so there was some fights that we didn't get, but even including the disrespect, like Run PMC mentioned, that Bradley was given during his era, like, man, he almost fought everybody, dude. And then something else I wanted to ask you guys about, only because the commentary brought it up. I didn't think to score it that way, and I didn't, even going back and rewatching the rounds, but they were entertaining this idea of 10-8 rounds when Bradley was not knocked down. And I wanted to know your thoughts. Like, when I watched it, it didn't cross my mind to do it. I've never given a 10-8 round in any of these rescores where the other guy wasn't knocked down. And so, when I went back and watched it again with that consideration, I still didn't, but I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on it.
That's a great point, and I love to hear what y'all think on it too. But I know for me, I'm kind of like by the book, right? So either it happened or it didn't. Even though he's clearly hurt, I mean, he was hurt a lot of the rounds, and he was hurting Provodnikov as well too. A lot of times it seemed like he was up on his feet where the ropes were kind of holding him up, or he was barely just able to grab onto Provodnikov. But even then, his glove didn't touch the canvas and he didn't fall, so I couldn't call 10-8. But I could see why someone, if they were to do it, that would be the fight to do it. Just based off the level of punishment he was taking and just how out he was on his feet. But I personally don't.
Yeah, I like I said earlier, I think you have to go off what the referee says. If not, what are we judging at that point? Because I've heard in the past HBO saying if it was a knockdown, but it was really a slip, but the referee ruled a knockdown, they're saying, oh, that's really a 10-9 round. Because as we saw in the replay, well, sorry, judges don't look at replays. Well, unless you're Nevada and you're doing the for the headbutts and unintentional fouls and that type of thing. But I think you just have to go off the judges. And I also think you should be rewarded if you actually get a knockdown. Because if you're just giving out 10-8s for just brutalizing someone, but they didn't go down, I don't really think that's fair to the person that does end up knocking the other person down. That a round where you're dominant in but don't knock them down could be considered the same as a fight where you do get knocked down. So I mean, that's just how I score. That's how I always like to score. Just go off the referee. But I guess other people have their ways of scoring, but I think there should be more set rules in place. I don't know if there are rules for scoring, but obviously you have the 4 criteria, but I think you should have to go off what the referee says. Because if not, then the referee outside of fouls and breaking up breaks is rendered useless at that point if you're just going to do that. So that's just my opinion, though.
I personally didn't employ that in this fight. I could have, because Bradley looked like he was gonna basically he was in trouble. He looked like he was on his feet, knocked out. But I didn't use it. I mean, but when Max Kellerman, or I think he's the one that brought it up, that Bradley was visibly out of the fight. I think that you have 3 judges, and if one of them was to employ that rule or that sort of thing where he judges it a 10-8, I would have been okay with it, because it seemed like maybe it would have been fair for at least one of the judge to have that fight scored for Provodnikov, but it was a unanimous decision for Bradley. So I don't necessarily use that tactic, but I would understand it if somebody chose to use it on certain fights.
Oh, yeah. All right, man. Well, we can close the chapter on this one. I just want to see if anybody has any final thoughts before we move on.
Yeah, I have one last thing. When touch on what Sean said about Tim Bradley being a Hall of Famer. I definitely agree. He's a Hall of Famer, no doubt. And I was just looking at his box rec, and this run he went on to the fight before he fought for the world title, his first world title, to the first Pacquiao fight is crazy. It's Miguel Vasquez, Junior Witter, Edner Cherry Bomb Cherry, Kendall Holt, Nate Campbell, Lamont Peterson, Luis Carlos Abregu, who's the first one that knocked out Thomas Delorme, Devin Alexander, and Joel Casamayor. That's a crazy run that he went on undefeated.
Indeed.
Wow.
Just insane. Or he got no contest against Nate Campbell, but he was winning that fight. But it's just a crazy. That's an insane run, and then that's not including the 3 Pacquiao fights and this fight and the Marquez fight. That's just up until the Pacquiao fight.
No, that's a great point, as always, by Run PMC. The Nate Campbell fight, because he talks about it all the time on his podcast, is that kind of started the whole headbutt thing, big head, yes. Tim Bradley, and he had that thing of being a dirty fighter. So I know for me personally, that's why I didn't appreciate him, looking back as far as the run he went on. But man, he definitely earned it, man. That brother gave us some great fights, and he had a hell of a run. So he's definitely Hall of Fame. I mean, looking back, I'm I wouldn't realize that I was watching the Hall of Famer. The only time it really crossed my mind was watching this fight live, and then watching the Marquez fight live. Wow, this guy is special, man. I mean, for him to fight two different fights and still, pull off the victory against, tough opposition. So, my hat's off to him. I know he pisses off on the commentary, but who doesn't?
Hey, man, if I was just go ahead, no, Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention when it comes to getting in the Hall of Fame, I've noticed that it is exactly that, the Hall of Fame. And, I think what it is that they found themselves in a situation where there's other guys in the list. So I think eventually when there's room, they will put Bradley in there. And I'm hoping for that, especially after, this breakdown of the fight. It just gives you a deeper appreciation for the skills that Bradley had.
Absolutely. Just real quick, like on the young guys right now, the guys that get a lot of publicity and, pub and accolades, none of them have been to anything even close to this. And none of them have boxed like the way Bradley boxed against Marquez, not, overselling what his career was, but I think we actually should, because I don't think he gives enough credit. It's too encapsulated on, what he didn't do against, quote unquote, the robbery against Pacquiao and then the headbutts. But if you really look at his career and then look at the fights, he had some great moments, and, he should be appreciated and valued. And, hopefully with time that happens. That's just for me.
Oh, me too, man. So Run PMC, thank you so much for recommending this one. We can close this chapter on a very good win by Timothy Bradley. We all agree that it wasn't a robbery. Even Nopal, who scored it for Prevognikov, can understand how Bradley got this victory. So nice, clean win for Bradley. And hey, man, that was a treat. So now it's just time to discuss what we're going to do next. I was indulged last week, and then we've indulged Run PMC this week. So, hey, man, I'll leave it to Sean or Nopal. If any of you guys want to suggest something, man, I'd be open to going back and taking a look. What do you think?
Go for it, Sean.
Oh, man. Well, I think that we need to go and take a look back at I think we go all in, man. Here's the thing. We were talking about the resume and career. I think that's a good transition for a guy who's coming up on a big fight next week. As far as, Terrence Crawford. I would say Jermaine Crawford. Terrence Crawford against, Porter, against Showtime Porter, he's obviously been the man. You look at the skills, pay the bills, he's the man. But, the resume doesn't really reflect that. Kell Brooks Ghost, Amir Khan, before, way past his prime. He has names on there, some, but, it's not nothing like, we see with, Tim Bradley. So I'm looking forward to that. So with that being said, I would like to go back and look at, I think we go big or go home. I think we have to go big or go home in this case, because it is such a big week. I think we look at Canelo Triple G 1.
Oh, man. Hey, man, I love the idea. Hey, man, I'm down to go big or go home. We have to make sure that G-Funky's available, man.
Oh,
if
yeah,
he's not available.
Hey, it's all good, man. I'll take off work. It doesn't matter. It's that big, man. It's that important. Think about it. Our pound-for-pound fighter is about to fight in his biggest test. We got to recognize it, man. Is he really the real deal? How we've been living? Is this all been smoke and mirrors? I don't know. I mean, the talent says by the optics, he's not. So, since we're talking about something that was so, so exciting, like, what is he really going to be able to do? I think we got to talk about, something that kind of gets everybody's blood boiling. I mean, I think we got to go big or go home. So hopefully, G-Funky, if you're listening, you're available. And I'm going to take off work if I got to, whatever. It's that big for me.
Hey, man. Well, I've always said the Canelo cartel is not scared to talk about any fight, including the Triple G fight. So hey, dude. Oh, Lord. Look at G-Funky. Look at he was listening. I knew it, dude. You say anything about Triple G, this guy just starts to chime in. I already educated these guys on that fight. Well, I know you haven't talked to me about it, or no, Paul. He might be meaning D-Style. I know they watched that fight, but I got something else to say about it, and we're not scared to have that conversation. So we're going to talk to G-Funky, see what he has to say. If anything, we might put in another fight if G-Funky is not necessarily available. One fight that I want to talk about, if we can't, and I'll just throw this out there. If we can't do Triple G next week, I would love to go back, as far as a controversial decision, I would love to go back and rescore Mosley versus Cotto. I think that Mosley won that fight, but I haven't scored it for like fucking, maybe 10 years. It's been a long time. But I watched it once when I was high on Cotto, getting into Cotto, And I felt like Mosley won that fight, and nobody really talks about it. So if you guys are cool with it, that'll be our backup.
That's a plan B, and thank you. I get to watch both now, so thank you. Christmas came early for me. I'm down.
Damn.
All right, man.
That's a good
Sounds
fight too. That's a good fight. Cotto
That's a great
Mosley.
fight.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
dude. Cotto was on the come up, and Mosley still formidable, and this was before we knew that Cotto, well, we could get into it later. I'm not gonna start talking shit already, and maybe I'll see it with new eyes.
On the thumbnail, it's Robert Garcia and Victor Ortiz. When Victor was trained by Robert.
Oh man.
Wow.
That was a long time
We
ago.
have a complete broadcast on here. There's a
crazy.
channel that does the complete pay-per-view broadcast. But yeah, that's either one's good. If not, we have to keep that one, the Cotto Mosley, for another time. We definitely need to. I'm adding that to the list I have here of possible ones. Then if we do the Triple G.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent, man. Because you know what, we're gonna get to all of them, man. Any controversial fight, like we've gotten through some great ones, but there's still a shit ton to get through, dude. One day, like when we're bored out of our minds, I want to do the Holyfield Valuev fight, or I don't know. Maybe we could just give our scorecard. I mean, we don't have to talk about it that much, but I do hear that Holyfield was robbed. But that's another time, man. I want to talk about some hot shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, both those are good though. Both those are good. Yeah, so we'll have to see what G Funky's up to, but I'm down for either one too.
Look at G Funk. He's ready to make room, come in and start. Come in, start being all salty and squirming. But you know what? G Funky's the man, and he was on very good behavior last time. And this next time, now that it's not Canelo week, he could speak his mind. You know what I mean? Just like I'm gonna speak mine. I'll tell you that right now. All right, dude.
I'm just wondering. He said all educated these guys. Is he considering me Canelo Cartel now? I think some these guys in here.
G Funky's getting in troll mode already, man. He's got this energy, and it's going to be directed towards Canelo if we start talking about Triple G, which is fine, man. G Funky's properly given Canelo his flowers, in my opinion. He's given the proper respect, but that doesn't mean we can't go back and talk about a really controversial one. So, hey, man, I'm with Sean, man. We got to go big or go home. So if we don't cover it next week, we'll be covering Mosley versus Cotto. But hey, man, for the guys on El Chilo, thank you all so much for coming to kick it with us. You know what I mean? And feel free to watch either fight because we're going to get to both. You can check me out on Twitter or in the Discord, the HCP Discord. We're HCP, man, so you can look into what we got going on there. So, hey, thank you all so much, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.